Slopeland disasters caused by extreme weather in recent years have posed severe threats to the safety of people's lives and property. Hence, one of the foremost important tasks for the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau is to strengthen the conservation management of slopeland. The conservation and management of slopeland include complex landslide, debris flow, and torrent control. The purpose of management is to lower the production of slopeland sediment and mitigate slopeland sediment disasters and sedimentation in downstream river reservoirs. In 1990, a severe complex landslide occurred in Lishan caused by days of torrential rain.
梨山地滑，根据我们这个航照判示，以梨山宾馆为中心的话，这样算起来的话，一个这样类似扇形的这样一个情形，总面积大概在320公顷左右。
Slate deposits in the Lishan area became more fragmented due to gravity deformation, where runoff water easily infiltration and induced complex landslides. Hence, the surface water drainage engineering was installed with collecting boring and catchment well, 2 drainage tunnels, and a monitoring station set up to control the dynamic situation of stratum and take response actions. Lishan Guest House was reopened in 2012, and it meant the starting of recovery of Lishan's tourism industry for the residents. From the perspective of national land conservation and soil and water conservation, the reopening symbolizes the specific demonstration of excellent effectiveness with the complex landslide remediation at Lishan. The Shalunza area at the upstream of Shimen Reservoir was hit by Typhoon Eri in 2004, and severe landslides happened. The Soil and Water Conservation Bureau immediately carried out relevant restoration work and currently has recovered the natural and original landscape. Typhoon Saola landed in Hualien with furious storms in 2012 and triggered debris flow. After the disaster, the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau implemented multiple facilities to prevent debris flow disasters and protect residents' safety. Typhoon Saola also caused severe damage to Provincial Route No. 2 Dashi Bridge, Railway Bridge, and other facilities. After the disaster, the Bureau adopted to take actions that consider about disaster prevention and ecology to maintain the local ecology and environment. Moreover, the Bureau set up farm ponds at the slopeland as farming water storage, detention basin, and to improve the ecology and environment, providing an ideal place for leisure and recreation. The Bureau strengthens emphasis on environmentally friendly consideration when faced with appeals from the public and environmental protection groups to maintain the environment and ecology, which is also the critical direction for executing soil and water conservation projects.
以及说，我们水土保持像是一个大地的医生，其实我们更像一个护士。那当然像我们现在做的生态友善的作业呢，就希望在这个过程里面来讲话呢，我们在这个伤口啊能够复原的越快越好。那同时来讲话呢，它也能够让它这个很快的这个恢复这个生命力，而对周围的环境来讲话也并能够照顾。
Through the site survey conducted by professionals, public involvement, habitat evaluation, and drawing of environmentally sensitive maps, we review the ecology checklist by proposing specific and feasible suggestions for environmentally friendly action. Doing slopeland conservation management not only relieves slopeland sediment disasters, but also lowers the impact on the environment and ecology. To assure safety, peace, and happiness for inhabitants is the Bureau's ultimate goal. implementation of slopeland monitoring and management is the first defense for guarding slopeland in order to conserve soil and water resources and reduce slopeland disasters. According to the Soil and Water Conservation Act and Slopeland Conservation and Utilization Act, slopeland with an elevation over 100 meters or slope grade greater than 5% must apply for the relevant development utilization and can only use the land after passing review. According to the limitation of land utilization, the slopeland is classified into agricultural and animal husbandry suitable land, forestry suitable land, and strengthened conservation land. The public must fill out a restriction of slopeland utilization check application provided by local branches of the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau. Bureau staff will cooperate with land administration personnel to conduct boundary verification and make careful measurements of the site. After returning to the branch, staff will enter the data measured at the site into the computer to precisely calculate the average slope grade. Staff will also sort the effective soil depth, level of erosion, and substratum properties before delivering the land classification results via letter to the county government for announcement. The Bureau will check the Soil and Water Conservation Plan engineering reviewed and approved by the Council of Agriculture during the construction period. In the implementation of construction checks, the obligator of water conservation and the supervision technician in charge must prepare the supervision records for an explanation on site. If the check results do not conform to water conservation technology specifications, the obligator of water conservation will receive a notice for correction within a specified time. If projects notified for correction fail to do so by the deadline or do not conform to technology specifications, the project will be suspended and only resume once corrections have been completed within the specified time. Additionally, if slopeland is suspected of causing disasters, whether due to natural phenomena or if man-made development in the area demands urgent attention for soil and water conservation treatment and maintenance, the Bureau will autonomously investigate and monitor, or after application by local governments or the public, design designated areas according to relevant criteria and enhance management funded by the central competent authority. Upon completion and termination of deployment, the Bureau will submit a termination plan and restore the area to general control. The Soil and Water Conservation Bureau will communicate with residents before designing the designated water conservation area, with the understanding that the design of a particular soil and water conservation zone does not aim to restrict public rights and interests, but rather to reduce loss of life and property. Besides regular investigation, monitoring, and effective management, the Bureau also expects the public to understand the importance of soil and water conservation and work together to prevent soil and water disasters and protect the homeland. The frequency of debris flow disasters caused by extreme weather and intense precipitation in Taiwan has increased in recent years. To control the relevant information in advance and prevent major losses, the government started the investigation of potential debris flow torrents in 1992. The Bureau conducted site surveys on the areas of potential debris flow torrents in Taiwan, including position overview and investigation of the status of potential debris torrent overview, type of protected objects in times of disaster, building overview, and scope of influence, as a reference for local governments during routine drills and disaster evacuations. To understand occurrence mechanisms and characteristics of debris flow, the Bureau has established 21 debris flow observation stations, 3 landslide observation stations, and 4 sediment concentration observation stations in Sherman Reservoir. Apart from the aforementioned stationary observation stations, there are 3 mobile debris flow observation trucks and 17 simple observation stations, as well as 61 automatic rainfall stations to facilitate information integration and enhance precision of warning issuance. Additionally, the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau and National Zhongxing University built the world's first Landau Creek field-scale sediment transport experimental station. The experiment station for debris flow occurrence and landslide dam breaching was established using a debris flow scale equivalent to torrential rains during moderate typhoons. When disasters become inevitable and approach high frequency and complexity, the building of a complete disaster prevention and rescue system is essential to enhance the public's disaster awareness. The self-dependent resistant community has long been a critical part of disaster prevention work. The Bureau has gradually promoted self-dependent resistant communities since 2004 and assists community residents with awareness and self-dependent resistance according to communities' respective characteristics through simulation, disaster prevention drills, publicity, and training for specialists in debris flow disaster prevention. A total of 550 villages have completed the Self-Dependent Resistant Community 2.0 stage since 2018, where the villages introduce a professional collaborative team to strengthen partnership with local governments so that everyone will become involved in the self-dependent resistant community work. In compliance with the principles of self-dependent resistant communities, the Bureau also recruits specialists for debris flow disaster prevention through professional courses and training to give them the debris flow disaster-related knowledge and disaster prevention skills needed to help communities with relevant debris flow disaster prevention work. The Bureau also advocates the concept of debris flow disaster prevention and rescue education through broadcasting vans. The Bureau drives the vans onto school campuses to promote debris flow disaster prevention through AR interactive instruction, picture books, disaster prevention competitions, and other lively and interesting activities. As technology advances, the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau also upgrades its capacity in disaster prevention, conducting disaster prevention monitoring via innovative technology. UAV aerial shots aim to regularly establish the imagery information for areas susceptible to disasters and key management areas. Emergency aerial shots after a typhoon or torrential rains are a critical data reference. The use of satellite imaging interpretation technology can help identify changes in debris flow and slopeland in Taiwan after catastrophic typhoons and torrential rains. The Bureau can evaluate possible disaster zones and secondary disasters and include these images in the information network for debris flow disaster prevention. The Bureau has also developed debris flow and disaster prevention websites and an app, and integrates social media platforms for information release, so the public can acquire information on disaster prevention via a variety of channels at all times. To improve the deployment of disaster prevention, the Bureau invites local governments to call for multiple debris flow disaster prevention preparatory meetings each year before the rainy and typhoon seasons. The meetings aim to control the county-city status of processing debris flow disaster prevention preparation with follow-ups on progress before the anti-flood period. The Bureau's 6 branches are distributed in various townships to organize debris flow disaster prevention publicity so that people can be involved from the bottom up through proper approaches in the implementation of disaster prevention work. The Rural Regeneration Program aims to create new value for rural communities and directly take care of rural and fishing communities, farmers, and fishermen in Taiwan. The Bureau has trained over 2,500 communities among the 4,232 rural communities in Taiwan, and more than 700 communities have passed the Rural Regeneration Program. Taiwan's rural communities are undergoing continuous revitalization, growth, and transformation with the Bureau's assistance. The key point for rural regeneration is people. And only the stimulation of rural residents' passion for their hometown and capacity for independent construction of new hometowns can change rural villages. Hence, the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau organizes workforce cultivation all over rural communities in Taiwan to familiarize residents with local resources and further develop action plans, thereby outlining the blueprint for rural development. The Manpower Training Plan launched by the Bureau aims to integrate existing local organizations and human resources for local talent training. The plan uses rural villages as training bases and centers on community needs and characteristics to customize courses for the communities. The training plan connects rural communities and integrates resources from different places to strengthen the concept of rural regeneration. Young people are the hope for the future of rural villages. The Bureau encourages young people to return to rural communities to promote rural development. The Bureau launched the Rural Up project for college and university students since 2011 and offered a series of programs for students to apply their creativity or expertise to rural communities and experience public services, co-creating new rural value with the community residents. The special landscape and cultural assets of rural communities have long been their most valuable resources. The Bureau assists rural communities to improve the ordinary spaces of communities and promotes landscape and leisure in the natural environment. The communities are encouraged to preserve cultural assets, promoting and inheriting the rural culture of Taiwan. Independent and stable economy is the foundation of rural regeneration. Hence, the Bureau counsels rural communities to transform from industry to corporate management by exploiting rural communities' advantages and incorporating professional incubation counseling. The Bureau assists small farmers to establish a complete operation model and foster the development of small farmers into agricultural enterprises. Moreover, to generate opportunities for Taiwan's rural communities and agriculture, the Bureau even invites local governments, private sector organizations, NPO and NGO enterprises, schools, and different units to participate. The Bureau intends to collaborate with these units in promoting Taiwan's rural regeneration through the enthusiastic introduction of new concepts and vitality. Rural residents have rediscovered the dignity and vitality of life through the assistance of the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau. The involvement of residents leads to new opportunities for rural development, and the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau can complete its land conservation work. Everyone works together to find a new look for the land and create new value for rural communities.